Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Your series. I'm so glad you could all join us this afternoon for these very interesting guests that we have today. Our first speaker will be Ken Stober, who is a .com refugee from Intel and currently doing much more interesting work leading the International Mountain Explorers Club Connection, which does really, really interesting work worldwide, working with porters and making sure that folks who work with them are treating them in an equitable manner. Also, Christy Massey is here. She's one of our fabulous local guides who runs Mountain Madness out in West Seattle, and they do many, many climbs a year, both in Nepal and in Africa, and also Mount Elbrus in Russia. And they'll be doing a benefit climb in December that hopefully they'll speak with you about in the presentation. That's very interesting. And also Lema Peter from Tanzania, currently in the States. We're very lucky to have him up to speak with us about the porting experience in Africa and a lot of the work that's going on in there. So please help me welcome Ken, Christy, and Lema.
Thank you. How many people have been to Africa? Kilimanjaro? Climbed Kilimanjaro? Couple. Oh, the hands go down. Okay. Been to Nepal? Been to Nepal? Okay. So some of you have climbed and been to some of these places. As mentioned, my name is Ken Stober, and I represent the International Mountain Explorers Connection. We're Boulder-based. I live in Portland, Oregon, and we have offices in Moshi, Tanzania, and also Kathmandu, Nepal, as well as doing a partner program with some people down in Peru called the Inca Porter Project. Our group started in 1996 it's been a nonprofit, and started as 1996 as kind of a connection for bringing people that wanted to travel to Nepal. It was initially started out as the Himalayan Explorers Club. And we started sending teachers over, sending volunteer teachers over to meet with, or to teach English and to teach into some of the classrooms up in some of the Everest regions, to provide English and doing homestays and living right in the villages. It grew as we kept going to provide treks. We did some cultural treks. We also provide handbooks so that people going to these countries or going to Nepal initially can then have opportunities, volunteer opportunities, that they may be able to match up with some of these other organizations. So as we started teaching classes, one of the things that we found is the amount of students wanting to attend school increased dramatically. So as you can see here, we started working on projects such as building a school. This is the Santa Gamela School, north of, or just up from Namche Bazaar. And what we did is we put an addition to the school because there were so many more students wanting to come to attend. And as we did homestays, we started matching up, and this is where the group got together. In fact, this is how I joined the organization initially, as I went on a trip with them, fell in love with the people and the culture, and then stayed involved since 1998. And that's what we found, is as we were bringing people over there, they would be immersed in the culture and do more things into the communities. In 2000, or just about the 2000 time frame, as tourism was dropping, if some of you realized in Nepal with some of the Maoists and some of the things that are going on, tourism started dropping quite dramatically. So we kind of made a decision of, do we want to take these programs and move them beyond just what we're doing in Nepal? And we decided, yes, that made a lot of sense. And so we all opened up an office in Moshi, Tanzania, doing some of the same things. So one of the first things we did is we started a volunteer handbook. One of the organizations that we support is an orphanage here in Moshi, the Amani Children's Home, where we provided volunteers and helped them in various ways. And as trekkers go over to these different communities, people want to just give back and want to do some volunteer work. And here's an example of a couple of people who were on a trip to climbing Kilimanjaro that wanted to help out, and we had them painting a school and playing soccer with some of the local kids in the village. projects that we've worked on, this was a village, actually this was a bridge in Nepal, if you can believe this was a bridge. We'd sent teachers to this village in the past to do different volunteer opportunities, but the school happened to be, the local school for the kids happened to be across this river. So if the kids wanted to go to school, they walked down the hill and they crossed this rickety bridge. So as you can see, they're up at the very top there is their village, and down at the bottom was this rickety bridge. Well, it was a 3-hour walk for the kids to go across to the safer bridge, or the bridge that didn't get washed out during the monsoon season. So some people from IMEC got together and helped fund a bridge so that the kids could go to school. So instead of a 3-hour walk now, we're down to 45 minutes. And what it's done now is more kids from that village are now going to school. So IMEC has looked at different opportunities, infrastructure opportunities, volunteer opportunities, and we've worked with some of these. And this really comes from people going over and visiting some of these sites and visiting some of these communities and seeing some of the things, coming back and wanting to give back. Reforestation. It's been a big issue in Nepal and in Africa, where in the past people would go over and chop down wood for cooking, for doing some of the things that they needed for hot water, and we had a problem with forest being depleted. So we started projects like this where we're actually doing reforestation and teaching the people how to properly take care of the forest, planting the trees and getting the trees up there. And then what we do is we help by providing volunteers for this kind of an opportunity. In a recent project, we raised some money to send an oxygen concentrator over to Nepal, and this is to put up in one of the clinics up at one of the higher altitudes. So if a porter or if a local person gets sick, this is an opportunity to give them oxygen until other means of rescue can be obtained. But one of the biggest things that we started in about 1999 is, as we were going through doing some of these different things, we came across issues that we started seeing with the porters. And a lot of people, when I mention porters, they say, oh, you mean the Sherpas? Well, actually, the Sherpas aren't really the porters anymore in Nepal. A lot of the porters, and this being in Nepal and Africa, are actually the lower land farmers who come up and they work into these areas. And in some cases, this is their only means of making money. The farm isn't paying the money, so this is the way that they do it. And these porters are making probably anywhere from, we've heard as low as $2 a day up to $7, $8, $9 a day to carry loads from, in Africa at, about 25 kilos into Nepal. I've seen loads at 120 pounds that they're carrying at $5 a day. So what we started doing is working with other organizations out there. As I mentioned, the Inca Porter Project in Peru, the Porter's Progress in Nepal, the International Porter Protection Group, which is worldwide, and I'll talk more about working with Mountain Madness and how we're working with them to help promote and raise issues about porters. We also partner closely in Kathmandu with the Kathmandu Environmental Education Project. And what we started to see is, we started to see stories like this, that the porters didn't have the right clothing. They weren't getting paid properly. They were just left to die on the paths that they were working on. Here's frostbite. Didn't have the proper clothing at the altitudes or at the temperature. Here's a porter carrying his load in the snow in flip-flops. Just didn't have any shoes to put on, so he's wearing flip-flops. This actually is a dead porter who was sick, and he was sent down because he wasn't feeling well. He claimed he could do it. He claimed he was okay, and about part of the way down, he collapsed and died. And as you can see, his basket is just still laying there. This is frostbite on the feet. Again, not the proper outfits. About 3 years ago, three porters died up on Kilimanjaro. They were hiking with a group like any of us that would go over to these places. They were hiking. It got bad weather. A storm came in. They didn't have the proper outfits. And what ended up happening was they died of hypothermia. Three separate porters, two in one group and one in another group, but all died from the same storm. And again, these are the issues that we kept hearing over and over and over again. A porter without proper footwear. This is climbing Kilimanjaro. Just last year, in fact, I was up on Kilimanjaro when this happened. A bad storm, once again, a bad storm came in. Two porters who were actually up working for the park system, moving gear up to higher camps. A storm came in, didn't have the proper gear. They climbed underneath a rock, fell asleep, died of hypothermia. They were dead the next day when they were found. So we kept hearing stories like this, and we said, you know, these kinds of things need to stop. So what IMEC did, we changed our name from the Himalayan Explorers Connection to International Mountain Explorers Connection. We started an office in Africa, and we opened up the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. And what this is an office that helps relieve some of these issues with the porters. And one of the things that we do is we have a clothing lending program where we collect clothing from various organizations. Like here's an example, Vail Beaver Creek Ski School gives us all their extra ski jackets. They don't necessarily donate them locally because they don't want them coming back up onto the ski or the mountain. So they give them to us, we send them overseas, and now the porters have decent warm clothes to wear. So we have a clothing lending program. We also do stuff with tourist education as well as porter education. And it's based off of a similar program that we started in Nepal a few years earlier. What we do is we meet with the porters, the local porters in both communities, find out what the issues are. There's some issues, different issues in each of the communities. Find out what they are, and then set our program up based on what we find. And then what we do is we depend on couriers to take clothing over for us. And as I use the example here, we get somebody who's going to go over. So if you're going to go to Nepal over the next couple of months, the next year, give us a shout. We'll give you a bag of clothes. You'll take it over, and you can deliver it to one of our offices. And then we use that into our clothing lending program. And what we learned about the clothing lending is initially we told people, we'll just give your extra stuff to the porters. And what we started finding out is the porters would just turn around and sell it or not use it. So we said, okay, we've got to come up with a different alternative, and that's why we came up with clothing lending. We put patches on it to identify it as ours. We give it to the porters. When they're finished, then they bring it back, we get it cleaned up, and it's ready to be used over and over again. Local companies like OR, based here out of Seattle, they've donated a tremendous amount of gear. Here's some of their gloves that are used in our Kili office. So we're working with a lot of these companies, some of them locally here. And what we do is we get a lot of their warranty returns or some of their overstocks, stuff that didn't sell, or maybe just slight flaws that we can actually send over and get them fixed pretty easily and use them in our offices. This is our office in Nepal, and as you can see, we have a wide array of different types of clothing. Not just the jackets, but we also have shoes and socks and hats and pants. So now that they're wearing proper gear up onto the mountain. Montreal's been one of our, again, local Montreal's been one of our biggest contributors for our shoes. And we get tremendous amounts of shoes from them. Again, worn one time or not the right things, and they'll put them in boxes and we ship them over there. So we have a good supply of shoes. And as I mentioned, we then just clean them up and then we send them back, or we get them back into the cycle for the next porter to use. Beyond the clothing lending program we see as just kind of a piece of that, and we're hoping that it's a short-term piece because we don't want the people to become completely dependent on us for clothing. So what we want to do is we also want to do things like doing education. So here's an example where we're teaching actually first aid classes in our African office, where we actually have the local Red Cross come in and work with the porters and teach first aid. So we do that about every other week. We'll have a first aid class filled with the porters coming in when they're not working up on the mountain. We're looking to expand. We also now have English classes. So we're doing basic English classes. In fact, up here, if you want to take one with you, we hand these out as well. And these are real simple English Swahili phrases. And it's not, probably a lot of them that you can find in your tour books when you go over, but we're also using these for communications between the porter and the clients. So a lot of times what we heard, and a lot of those deaths that were happening up on the mountain, was because the porter and the clients weren't talking. I mean, I can't imagine anybody in this room, if a porter came up and said, I'm cold, I'm wet, that wouldn't grab into their bag and pull out an extra spare jacket. And the problem is a lot of times you don't even know about that kind of stuff is happening. So what we're trying to do is encourage the communication between the porters and the clients, and a lot of times it's just as simple as a couple key phrases learning so that the porter, if there is an issue, can talk to the client. And then we encourage, once you're finished with the card, to give it to your porter so that they have a quick and easy little simple reference. The other big piece of it is working with the tourists. what we find is the tourists are really going to make the decisions and make these changes. As much as we want to have the clothing bank, as much as we want to do the education, it's you people that are going to go over there that are actually going to spend the money, that are going to make the difference of what's going to happen. So what we want to do, and in fact this was an example of our Africa Porter guidelines, and there's samples up here if you guys want to take some, and we have some on our website. But what this does is this goes through the different types of things that we recommend that you're aware of for porters when you go and climb or when you book your trip. You know, ask them, ask the people that you're booking with is, what kind of pay are they getting? Are they getting proper food and water? Are these people on staff or are these people are contracted? What kind of tents do they have? Do they have a place to sleep? So these are just some guidelines of what kinds of things to look for. Tipping, reporting of, neglect and abuse, so that if we do hear some things and some problems, we can hear about it. Taking care of your sick porter. So if you have a porter that's sick, what are you going to do? It's actually your responsibility to make sure that porter's taken care of. And in the case of Nepal, you can actually get into legal trouble if you don't have proper insurance for your porters when they're up on the mountain. So this gives you some guidelines when you go over, so you're a more responsible traveler. We have one for Peru as well. So the next step of this to educate the tourist is working with some of the companies that actually do trips over there. Good example is working with Mountain Madness. Mountain Madness was one of the first ones to work and partner with us on this. And the first thing we do is we develop and promote proper porter treatment guidelines. So what Mountain Madness does is they take the guidelines that we provided and they'll put them up on their website, and they actually send copies of this porter picture out in each of their packets. So every client that goes out has one of these that goes, that gets put into the packet. So we're trying to work with them. We're trying to educate the clients so that you're more responsible when you go over to travel. And not only just your porters that you have in your group, but also the people that are in other organizations that may not be part of this. We distribute materials, as I mentioned, the porter guidelines, the English language cards, and then we ask for help in transporting gear and equipment. We've got boxes and boxes of gear in Portland, Oregon, and Boulder, Colorado that we're trying to get moved over to Africa, Nepal, and Peru. So we're always looking for people who can take an extra bag with them. So I have a quick little video. And this video is Wes Krause up on Kilimanjaro. Wes works for African Environments, which works very closely with Mountain Madness. In fact, he's one of the founders of Mountain Madness. And we ran into him up on the mountain, and he's just talking about some of the issues with porters.
Professional. In order to have a professional team that you can count on and trust and we're always going to be there to do for you what you need of them, you have to be able to take proper care of them. We sort of started out trying to identify people who were good on the mountain and who wanted to be sort of professional mountain people. And once you get that little core together, then obviously you have to take it a step further and make sure that they're properly taken care of and that they have the equipment or at least access to the equipment that they need. You have to provide them with shelter and decent food, and then, they can't possibly become professional employees unless they get paid enough to turn it into a career for them. And so, we started looking at how much the market could bear to pay these guys, and I think we did a pretty good job at trying to push their salaries up, and we certainly have been paying more than anybody else we know about on the mountain here. And we're hoping that is going to be a trend that other companies take on as well and start to try to take better care of their people and build a professionalism here that, these guys can really work with and become career people on the mountain.
So that was Wes just talking about some of the issues that he's doing. Now, he hires porters. He has staffs of porters that are on, people on staff all the time, porters and his guides. And he's probably one of the best that we've been hearing in the Kilimanjaro area as far as taking care of porters, providing proper clothing, proper food up on the mountain, proper camping equipment. So besides Mountain Madness, we've been working with several other organizations as well, some of the key companies that run trips to these various places. So here's a list of Some of the partners, the people that are part of the partnership for responsible travel. It just started about a year ago, and as you see, we've got some of the key people that are going over to these various locations. As we keep going, we're still working on education. I mean, people don't know who IMEC is. A lot of people aren't even aware of the porter issue, so we're constantly working with people in the industry to get the word out. Here, for example, is Leaky, which is one of our sponsors. Poles, if you've ever been trekking the Leaky poles, and they have our logo down in the corner on their poles that basically promotes what we're doing. This is actually a Mountain Hardware article that was written spring of 2003 in one of their catalogs, and they basically, who carries the load, and it talks about the issues that are going on and some of the guidelines for porters. And then here was an article in one of the trade magazines for the clothing companies that talks about if you have extra clothes, here's how you can donate your clothing to us. As well as just getting some stuff out into the local newspapers here for Kathmandu, talking about helping the porters in Kathmandu. So the goal is to start, this here is a group of porters up on the mountain, up on Kilimanjaro, who are all now have the proper outfits, are in the proper tents, having proper food, and that's kind of what we want to see, because it's going to end up being a better trip for you and for them. So people ask, what can I do to help? Well, we have a list. You can, first of all, take care of your porters when trekking. How many people are planning on going to Kili or Nepal soon? A couple? Okay. All right. So take care of your porters when trekking. Report any abuse of porters or staff. If you see things like this or hear about these things, let us know. Those articles that you saw on Outside and National Geo, the reason that those got into that is because we actually reported it to them so that they were more aware of it. We could get more awareness out there. And in fact, the Park Association was not very happy with us when those articles got posted on there, because it wasn't necessarily a positive thing. But what it does is we're starting to see changes. Now you're starting to see changes in the actions of the companies, the action of the park, and the action of the guides. Educate others, be a porter advocate. If you know people that are going, or if you know groups of people that are going, and you want to teach them about what's going on, or you want us to come in and help educate or get materials from us, be a porter advocate. Deliver clothing and gear. So any of you that are going to these places, let us know. We can get gear up. I'm down in Portland. I'll be more than happy to bring a bag of gear up. And you can take a bag or a box or whatever to our offices. We can meet you at the airport, whatever you need to do. If you've got time, volunteer your time. Besides the porter issue, we mentioned we've got volunteer opportunities when you go to these different countries. If you'd like to go and volunteer in Nepal or Africa, we have a handbook for our members. Financial support. I work for a nonprofit, and I'm always looking for financial support. So we're always looking for ways to do that. It can be in contributions, it can be in donations, it could be in being a member of the IMEC. And part of your membership goes towards these programs, as well as being able to get volunteer handbooks and visit our clubhouses and be part of that. And then finally, climb Mount Kilimanjaro with Mountain Madness. And one of the things that's happening, in fact, that's why we're here today, is there's going to be a climb of Mount Kilimanjaro that you'll hear a little bit more about in December. And part of the proceeds and some of the fundraising will go towards IMEC. So if you're looking to go climb Kilimanjaro, now's the time to do it. Not only going with a great company, but also some of the proceeds will come back to us, and you'll be able to see firsthand what's going on over there. So I am going to turn it over to Lemon now. Who's going to talk? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Lemmer, as Kenny says, and all that. I'm originally from Tanzania. I was born and raised in Arusha. That's like the center of tourism in Tanzania. So most of the young people, they just try to get involved in the tourism and everything. I started from the very low level in this industry. I started as a porter, but I kept training myself, and by having a lot of support from Mountain Madness African environment, then that's why I'm on the position that I'm right now, being a trip leader, which was a long ways to get in that position. And I always just thank them a lot, because if these guys didn't decide to take care of me, trying to think of what kind of equipment I need, and sometimes be there to help and donate those kind of equipments to me, maybe I could be one of those dead porters, or I couldn't have some of my fingers or toes or that kind of stuff. So our main goal, as you can see, is just to encourage people to, support those people, because there's no other way we can afford to buy the hiking equipment, and even we don't have outdoor stores in Tanzania. So the only way we can get is from here in America. And then there's no any way we can get it if we won't be out here and talk to people and share those ideas and tell you. It is just to show to you guys exactly what the situation and all. Because people, they're there. The mountain's gonna be there, and you guys, you're gonna really looking forward to go over there after you get enough knowledge. But if you don't know anything about it, then either you find yourself in trouble. Not only that your porters won't have gears, or even yourself, you might be in a situation that you have someone, a guide, who is not knowledgeable enough or is not trained enough to be able to talk to you. Some of the guides that walk, he's a guide because he knows the route, he knows the trail, but he's ahead of you with the Walkman and the earphone on. There's no communication between you guys and them, and I'm sure nobody's ready to plan a 2-week safari or 2-week travel and spend a lot of money on that and just go and follow somebody, someone who is just, is not telling you anything, is not contributing anything to make your trip enjoyable and, have an experience of what you wanted to do and reach your goals and stuff. So we've been trying to figure out what we can do to make our climb easy and, benefit those locals and benefit your clients too. And this is one of the best thing I can say. These guys, they're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of support, and they're contributing a lot of their time, a lot of their gears, and I'm really, really thankful to have these guys around us. As a local person. Yeah. There's a lot of issues, like you might ask yourself, there's more than 100 tour companies just inside the Arusha. And everybody, if you go on the internet, you're looking for safari, you want to go to Africa, you want to go to Kilimanjaro, and everyone is trying harder to explain himself or herself, try to sell the business. They're just telling you all the best things that you can think of. They have all the information, but someone had never been even there. He had never been Tanzania, had never been Kilimanjaro, and he's telling you that, yeah, our company is the best. How are you going to prove that that's the best company? That's a really hard question. And even myself, I always just spend a lot of time on the internet trying to, read from one company after another, and they're all just kind of the same. Everyone is just promising a lot of things that they're not there. All right? And so the only way you can do that is, you have to question yourself. How are you going to, what are the basics as a climber? What you want to get in there? What kind of trip you're expecting? Are you going to end up shedding off your layers and then give to the porters, or you want to just talk to people here and support, talk to Kenny and those other organizations, try to figure out how we can make that the trip and the whole thing in general in a safe way, and have everybody go up there and then come down safely and happy. Because the key is not only what you spending to climb the mountain, but the main goal, the only thing you need to have is, you want to go over there, but you want to come back safe. And then you need at the same time, you need to have fun and enjoy. How are you going to have fun if you don't have anybody who is there telling you, giving a little bit lecture of how things go? How are you going to have fun if a porter is just dying for starvation or hypothermia because he doesn't have enough equipment? Well, the owner of the company promised you that, my company is the best in Tanzania. All my porters, they're well paid and they got all the gears. And you're there eating, you got all the high quality equipment, and the porters, they're shivering, shaking because of the cold. You won't be comfortable about it. So, so we're trying a lot, and some of us, we've been attending a lot of trainings, a lot of courses, and now we're trying. Myself, I'm here mainly because we are dealing with Americans, and I'm really proud of that. And then I want to spend a lot of time to learn about your culture, learn about how, when I go over there as a local, what kind of changes am I going to do over there, just to make you happy and that kind of stuff. And then at the same time, how am I going to help those porters that they didn't go to school? They can communicate with you, because at least if someone says, yeah, I'm dying here, I need a power bar, you could give it. But if he can't tell you that, you're not gonna, there's nothing you can do. So my being here, and a lot of other people, this Kenny and Madness, they're trying really hard to give education to porters. We have some English courses now we're trying to offer them, just to learn them, to teach them a little bit about communication, at least to say hi. My guide is killing me for, loading me with this kind of language. And there's a climber, you be there, you be in front of the line and say, no, this is not right. Because at the same time, you know for sure that how much a porter has to carry. But if you don't know that, if Kenny or if all of that stuff are not on the internet, or if Madness didn't say that, you're not going to know that. If someone is carrying 100 pounds, you don't care, because you are a climber. I'm not a local over there. But if you know that, then you're going to say, no, this is not right. And you make yourself happy, and then serve that local person over there. Then we won't lose a lot of porters. It takes a lot of time. Takes almost more than 2 years to train a porter, or to train someone to become a part or a team on that climb, because you really need to have someone that, if in case of any emergency, you'll be able to send him down with the climb, or send him down to call for the help, because we're not that much. We don't have things like helicopters. We're still in the third world countries, so we rely on these local people. If these guys, they're not knowledgeable enough, and if something happened on the mountain, I think the whole group might stuck over there and just wondering what you can do, and maybe lose someone for some reason. So, anything to say?
Would you guys like to take some questions?
Well, I just want to say one more thing. I'm Christy Massey, I'm from Mountain Madness. And just to kind of knit together all these relationships that we've been kind of throwing at you, our partner company in Africa is African Environments, and that's who Lemma works for. So all of the trips that run through Mountain Madness are actually run on the ground in Africa by African Environments. Does that make sense? The reason that Mountain Madness decided to partner with IMEC is that we are in our 20th anniversary this year. It's our 20th year of business. The company started in 1984, and we were really looking for a way to give back. And as we were kind of thinking about the business and how it runs, we decided that the backbone of our industry is really the porters and the work that they do. And so found IMEC and decided to partner with them, and we were the first company to get on board and feel that the education process and the work that they're doing is so critical to really bringing up the level of treatment for these people. The unemployment rate in Tanzania is 70%. So a lot of the people that are working on the mountain are working because that's really the only option that they have. And part of the reason that the wages can stay so low is that it is the only job there is, and people are willing to kind of race to the bottom. Something is better than nothing. And so by setting some standards and really helping these folks out, we're kind of bringing the level of their living conditions, etc., and their work life. It's not a fun job. It's really hard work. And these guys do a fantastic job in the programs that they're running, I can see. And so that's kind of to knit a little bit of a few of the pieces together. I just wanted to toss that out. And we have one more short video for you that talks about the trip that African Environments and Mountain Madness together run in Africa, and give you kind of a play-by-play of what it's like to go over there. Ready?
Kilimanjaro, looming 19,340 feet over the African plains, is the largest freestanding mountain in the world. Its snow-capped summit and relatively mild climate attracts a diverse group of adventurers bound for the summit. To reach the summit of Kilimanjaro, you need personal drive and determination, but you also need top logistical support to make your climb as safe and comfortable as possible. With 25 years experience outfitting Kilimanjaro climbs, we can optimize your chance of reaching the summit. 93% of our climbers reach the summit of Kili, compared to a 40% success rate on Kilimanjaro overall. Let's take a behind-the-scenes look at what will make your climb with us successful. The company owners and directors have more than 60 years climbing experience between them. We train our guides to internationally recognized standards. We design and manufacture our own specialized equipment. Expedition food is prepared and packed from our storerooms, and we check each item of equipment prior to every climb. Your climb will begin with a briefing by your trip leader, who will have summited Kilimanjaro more than 50 times. His advice starts with a careful review of your personal gear before the climb. If you don't have everything you need, a full line of expedition quality Marmot mountain gear is available to rent at the headquarters. Once you start hiking, you'll have no logistical worries. Take your time in the montane forest to explore Kilimanjaro's unique tropical alpine ecosystem. Your expedition cooks will hike ahead to prepare your lunch on the trail, while your camp crew goes ahead to establish camp. You arrive to find your tent set up with your extra gear and sleeping bag already in it. Relax and enjoy the afternoon. After 2 days in the montane forest, you hike into the unique giant heath zone, found nowhere else in the world. Heather towers over you, and a rare protea blooms along the trail. This long, 7-hour hiking day is broken by a luxurious picnic lunch set up among the heath. By taking it slow and enjoying the environment, you allow the critical time needed for your body to acclimatize to the altitude. There are no shortcuts to acclimatization. The human body can only acclimatize to 1,500 to 2,000 feet of elevation gain per day. If you ascend too fast, you could suffer from altitude sickness, which can be fatal. This is a critical consideration when choosing your climbing route. The Sierra Plateau Western Breach Route is particularly good for acclimatization and enjoying the environment. Climbers spend 7 to 8 nights on the mountain moving towards the summit. The Machame route requires only 5 to 6 nights and is fine for stronger hikers who have some altitude experience. The standard or Morongo route takes 4 nights and results in a drastically reduced success rate. Although the Morongo route is cheap, we feel it's unsafe, overcrowded, and provides a poor mountain climbing experience. Because we keep the altitude gain between camps at a safe level, you may arrive in camp early enough to enjoy the natural history of the mountain. On acclimatization walks, your guide will show you giant Lobelia and Senecio species, unique to the equatorial moorland zone. In the alpine zone, hardy flowers such as everlastings grow where nothing else seems able to survive. Once in the alpine zone, weather can be severe, and the quality of your equipment becomes critical. We regularly import expedition quality equipment from America. Our high-altitude mountain tents have been tested and proven around the world. They keep you warm and dry when the weather gets bad. Food is served in waterproof canvas mess tents that provide warmth. A menu has been designed to be tasty and provide the energy you need. It's critical that you drink lots of water to help keep altitude sickness at bay. Hot drinks are served continually, and drinking water is filtered with expedition quality Katydine water filters. Our trip leaders are fully prepared to identify the subtle signs of developing altitude sickness and deal with the problem promptly. They have all been certified as Wilderness First Responders, the American First Aid Course standard for outdoor guides. In addition to the standard first aid kits, we carry state-of-the-art mountain rescue equipment on all climbs. Hiking to the summit crater camp is the most challenging day of the climb. After a hearty breakfast, we set off from our 16,000-foot camp and spend the day climbing up volcanic rock slopes of the stunning western breach. Although this is a true alpine ascent, it doesn't require any technical climbing skill or equipment. We travel slow, breathe deep, and drink. At the end of the day, you find your camp and crew awaiting you on the chilly summit crater plateau. Staying at 19,000 feet, overlooking all of Africa, is for many the highlight of the trip. If you feel energetic, you can visit the massive Fort Wrangler Glacier looming behind your high camp, or hike to the inner crater and peer into Africa's highest mountain. You are by now well acclimatized. Enjoy a good dinner and a full night's sleep before summiting in the morning. The trip to the summit is one of the most distinguishing features of our climb. From high camp in the crater, wake up with the dawn, and after breakfast, attain the summit in only an hour or two. Why experience Kilimanjaro exhausted and rushed? Climb with us, and we will give you every opportunity to successfully summit Kilimanjaro and enjoy the journey. Kilimanjaro, 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 Zimambe Pusana. Kilimanjaro, 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 Zimambe Pusana.
That's the end of the presentation. I really appreciate everybody coming out. Thank you, Tamara, for organizing all this. This was wonderful. We do have some time for questions and answers. So if you have any questions about anything that we talked about, now is the time.
For at least Everest expedition, by law, the board is supposed to get like $1,800 as gear allowance. There's a $10,000 fee for the summit bid and stuff like that. Is that all in theory? How does that translate to the reality in Nepal specifically? And where does that money actually go? Like if you're giving a quota, first of all, do all quotas actually get that $1,750 that's mandated by law? And secondly, do they actually go out and buy gear, or does that money go somewhere else?
Yeah, what you'll find in like climbing Everest is there's kind of two aspects of it, and I'm sure Mountain Madness can comment in this. There's the aspect of going from the Everest base camp up to the top of Everest, and that's a whole entity run, and Christy will be able to talk better about that than I would. But there's probably the bigger issue of all that gear has to get up to Everest base camp, and the porters that you're talking about that actually are climbing up to the higher camps and to the summits, they go up there and do that, but there's a huge amounts of gear that has to be brought up to the Everest base camp to get all that stuff going. And these are porters that are hired on or brought in by the companies, by the Mountain Madness and everything like that. Those are the ones that don't usually qualify or aren't part of those types of programs. So those are the ones that IMEC is a little bit more concerned about, just for the fact that they have proper gear, that they're paid a fair wage to bring the stuff up to base camp, that they do not get sick, and everything's treated properly. And then once that gear is up there, then companies like Mountain Madness then have their porters and their guides that take it all the way up to the top of Everest. Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I think you're talking about the permit fee.
Yeah,
so like
permit
$10,000 permit fee, that goes to the government,
right.
And it's an internal system that allocates that money to those climbing service.
So do you find that the governments are supporting, or are they sometimes a hindrance? How's your interaction with the governments been?
In Tanzania, how that works is they're definitely, the government they're not really dealing with the ports. But yeah, you guys, you pay the park fees, and we're, as we guides and porters, we were willing that the government could just try to figure out a way of getting all the necessary equipment and support for the porters, but they're not doing that. And then that's why we rely or we depend on the companies and that kind of stuff.
What we find with some of the parks is it's a little different in Kilimanjaro versus Nepal. In Kilimanjaro, there's a specific park fee and everything's controlled as far as what weights requirements, how many porters, things like that. Porters are only allowed 25 kilos. They have weights that go on there. Not saying that doesn't get abused, but they do have much stricter guidelines. In Nepal, on the other hand, the government does regulate, but there's no checkpoint or stopping point that anybody can go up into Nepal and climb up into Nepal. So, are there issues with the governments? Yes, they both set regulations. Are they followed? Probably a lot more so in Kilimanjaro than they are in Nepal. The issue comes back, the issue that I have a lot of times with the governments is the reporting mechanism. If people are injured or hurt or killed, is there a reporting mechanism that something happened, how do we fix it, what do we can do about it? And that seems to be lacking in both locations, in fact, pretty much all locations.
So are there two groups?
One question over here.
You may have already answered this previously, I'm really sorry. How many routes are officially guided on this mountain?
On Kilimanjaro?
On Kilimanjaro, we have more than 5 different routes.
Okay.
One route, which is the old one, Marangu route, that's the route that you can ascend and descend at the same route. But other routes, when you climb through the western side of the mountain, we call Shira route or Machame route, those are kind of longer routes. You have to descend through Mweka route.
Yeah.
So you do a loop. You just hike from western side of the mountain and you basically come down on the southeast of the mountain.
Are there any more technical sides?
We don't do any technical climbing in Kilimanjaro, and that's why it's kind of unique mountain. You go that high, 19,340 feet, without doing any ropes. No, you don't need crampons, ice axe, or anything. It's just a normal hike, and the only way you can do that is by following all the procedures, what your guide is telling you, if you follow that, then definitely you can make it.
Yeah.
But because we normally get a lot of people comes over there with the different, experiences and different personalities. Some of the people that have been on the Everest, that's Everest is higher than Kilimanjaro. And they pretty much don't want you to tell them what to do because they're kind of ignoring. That mountain is smaller. I've been to Everest. This is just some regular hiking. It's the same as hiking in, Seattle or somewhere. But they forgot that you are definitely in a different part of the world. There's a lot of, stuff that may happen in there if you don't really want to follow that stuff. And the key to summit the mountain, you just need a lot of time to acclimatize. You just go slow as much as you can. There's no any competition, no racing on the mountain. So, I've been guiding there for 7 years and be at the summit 90 times. But it's somewhere that you can go and all the time that's something that you'll never forget. And all the time when I go over there, I realize that, there's something I didn't see last time I was here. It's always new when you're over there. So there's a lot to see. There's a lot. It's something that you have it forever. I got a lot of emails from my clients. They're like, that trip changed my life completely. It's really,
What's a good time of the year?
We run trips from June to October, then we stopped November, then September through March, and December all the way to March, and a little bit April. But normally April and May, those are kind of the rainy season that we don't really do that. But it's not really. We companies, we African Environment and Mount Madness, we don't run that. You can see some other companies, they're doing that because they don't know really, they don't know really what they're doing. Some of them, they just, want to take you over there because trying to fit on your schedule, which is not really helpful if you're trying to think about summiting in a safe way, being out there enjoying. You know, we're close to the equator. During the rain season, it may rain for 24 hours, and we don't have firewood. We don't have any campfires, so there's no way you can dry yourself. So if you're there and you're hiking for 8 days on the rain, then it's not gonna be fun. Pretty much.
Any other questions?
How expensive is it to go across Madness?
For the 8-day climb, you spend 2 nights before that at an acclimatization camp. It's $3,000 per person.
How much do you pay your porters?
We actually pay our porters more than anyone else on the mountain. It's about $9 a day, and it includes their transportation to the mountain and all their food. Sounds terrible.
Yeah, it sounds low, but the average rates over there, the government set rate is about $7 to $8 a day, and then they depend on tips. And we hear stories all the time of some of the porters getting paid $2 and $3 a day. So, because again, back to that unemployment issue, when there's so many more people willing to work than there are jobs for it, that's the kind of thing that happens.
On an average expedition, how many hikers, trekkers go, and how many porters?
The largest group we normally take over there is 14. The size of the 14 people, 14 clients. And we have a rate of 3.5 porters per person. So you took...
It's about, I think it's going down.
It's going down?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're talking about if you have 14 people, 14 climbers, then you're going to be at least 65 local, 65 plus, including porters, guides, trip leaders, cooks, and all that stuff. And mainly it's just to support the group in case of any situation, then we can deal with that.
And do all those people go all the way, or is it more like
the route that we sell, that's the western side of the mountain. This is Shira route. We call it Shira Western Bridge. And Machame. Not much Machame, but Shira route, you're talking about 98 to 100% success rate. But when you do...
No, that wasn't my question.
Oh. About the porters, how high do they go?
Oh, the porters, on our situation, we go with most of the porters, but when you get to 16,000 feet, as you keep going, luggages are kind of, you run out of food because people are eating it. And then, so what we do is we collect all the trash. As we keep going, we have to, clean the mountain and send some of the porters back with the trash, just to make sure that the mountain environment is staying clean and, yeah.
They go to 18.5, and then they cruise over to the descent route while the climbers go to the top to 19.3.
Yes.
So porters do go all the way to 18.5.
And my time they go to 15.1 and stay there. And we get up in the morning, early morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, and go to the summit and come back and meet them and descend. Yeah.
How many people summit every year on the journey?
Oh, total. Do you know that number? Not huge. Way fewer than the summit average. Well, the better cardiovascular shape you're in, the more fun you'll have. That's my pat line. You need to be in reasonable cardiovascular condition, but it is not the altitude is the bigger factor. You only do about 1,000, 1,500 feet a day, except for one day where you do about 2,500. So if you're a pretty average hiker, you'll be fine. And you're only carrying a day pack. I mean, that's part of the reason we're employing so many porters, is you're just carrying what you need for the day. So some water, a raincoat, a hat, gloves, and your camera and your binoculars. So it makes it very doable.
So how does the time compare to, say, summiting Rainier?
It's not as intense. It's much more gradual. And the way that we go, you hear the word pull, or the phrase pulley all the way up. So we really hold people back more than we push them. because if you go slow down low, it pays you dividends up high. And last year when Lemon and I climbed together, we had this one guy he was hilarious, and he was in great shape and worked out at the gym, and every night we'd roll into camp, and he'd do like 100 push-ups. And when he got to 18,000 feet, he was a wreck. I mean, he was just a wreck, and I kept saying, Kevin, slow down, really, it's going to pay you later. So it's very gradual, it's very gentle, it's way less intense than climbing Rainier. The western breach, though, because you're going from 16,000 to 18,500, that's a pretty significant change in altitude, so the altitude factor is big, but it's not the same, like, calf burn that you get when you're going up Rainier. It's just a different kind of change in the elevation, but it's not that steep.
One more question, then we're going to break. Okay. Just have enough room for others. If that's it, please feel free to stick around. I'm sure Ken and Lena and Chris would have if you want to run afterwards.